Hi, it's Katrina. From a lost empire of tropical islands to a city buried below desert sands, ancient people knew way more than we give them credit for. Well, it's time they finally got the credit they deserve, don't you think? Let's get into it. The Forgotten Pacific Empire. You know Pompeii, the city frozen in time by a deadly eruption? Now picture its polar opposite, Pohnpei, P-O-H-N, a vibrant island hiding secrets far older and stranger than any Roman tragedy. The two places couldn't be farther apart. While Pompeii is a Roman city that's been covered in volcanic ash for 2,000 years, Pohnpei is a sleepy island in the Federated States of Micronesia that looks like it was dreamt up by a tropical romantic with a soft spot for waterfalls and mystery. Pohnpei is often called the Garden Island, which sounds like a resort brochure, but in this case is pretty accurate. Lush jungles, flowers growing like they're in a competition, and cliffs so dramatic they should have their own Netflix series. It's the most developed island in the Federated States of Micronesia, which means, yes, there is electricity, but also, yes, it goes out at least once a day. That's part of the charm. There is colonial history tucked into its corners, a Spanish wall and a German church. There are even some leftover Japanese tanks casually rusting in the jungle, as if it's totally normal for your hiking trail to pass as a World War II museum. But Pohnpei's real showstopper is something way, way older and way cooler than a crumbling wall or a rusty tank. Tucked into the southeastern edge of the island is Nan Madol, a ruined city made of massive stone blocks raised over the water and straight out of an ancient fever dream. Think if Angkor Wat, Machu Picchu, and Atlantis had a weird stone baby, then stuck it in the middle of the Pacific to fend for itself. About 1,000 years ago, some seriously ambitious islanders decided to move 750,000 tons of columnar basalt, some pieces as heavy as 50 tons. They had no wheels, no pulleys, no metal, no construction for dummies handbook. But they built 92 stone islands surrounded by canals on a coral reef, which, if you're keeping score, makes this one of the most advanced and mysterious ancient cities in the world, and also possibly the worst place to stub your toe barefoot. But who built it? Surely any civilization capable of constructing a whole island paradise left some message of themselves, right? Actually, they didn't. They didn't write anything down. They left no artwork, no ancient scrolls, no YouTube tutorials on how to stack 5-ton stones on swampy mangroves. The civilization that built Nan Madol vanished around 400 years ago. They left behind legends of sorcerers, levitation, and even a flying dragon. One of the island's myths is that the ancients built Nan Madol thanks to sorcerers who could float the stones with their minds. And of course, there are those who believe aliens are somehow involved, because what's an archaeological mystery without at least one extraterrestrial theory? Nan Madol isn't just mysterious, it's a little spooky. In 1907, a German archaeologist dug up a tomb and died the same night. His ship sank on the way home, along with all of the artifacts. In the 1930s, Japanese divers went looking for underwater relics, and 2 of them vanished. To this day, locals whisper about dark forces, cursed stones, and tourists who stayed too long and felt the island watching them. Okay, now that's creepy. Some call Nan Madol the Venice of the Pacific. Its stone canals and island layout give it a sort of Venice built with volcanic Lego vibe. Was it a trading port, a ritual center, a water world capital for seafaring Micronesians? Or was it, as one corner of the internet insists, an ancient spaceport for intergalactic visitors? To add to the intrigue, scientists only know where about 40% of Nan Madol's basalt came from. The other 60% is still a mystery. That's hundreds of thousands of tons of volcanic rock on full Houdini. No confirmed quarries have been found, no magic wand, just more unanswered questions waiting to trip up archaeologists for another century or two. So yeah, just when you think you've explored every lost city and solved every ancient riddle, some quiet island in the Pacific hands you a whole new mystery. Secrets lost in ancient caves. Here's a fun fact you probably weren't taught in school. Caves are the ultimate historical drama queens. Let me explain. Caves are quiet on the outside, but full of ancient secrets, mysterious deaths, and creepy enigmas on the inside. From underwater temples to prehistoric pig paintings, caves have been freaking out scientists since science was invented. And as it turns out, Atlantis itself might be hidden in a cave beneath Mexico. In 2000, marine engineer Pauline Zalitsky and her husband Paul Weinsweg were scanning the seabed near Cuba, hunting for sunken Spanish ships. Instead, they found an underwater city. Pauline and Paul, who, by the way, can we take a second to appreciate marrying someone with basically the same name as you? Anyway, Pauline and Paul spotted massive geometric structures, pyramid shapes, and what looked suspiciously like an entire sunken civilization, all on the bottom of the ocean. It seemed that they found Atlantis. No one has delved deeper into this mystery in 25 years. It made headlines and then was forgotten about, as if someone swept the whole discovery under the rug. But it wasn't swept away fast. People pointed out that according to ancient Maya legends, there was an island that sank off the coast of Mexico about 50,000 years ago. That island was supposedly home to a mysterious race of beings, and the sunken city near Cuba is connected to Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula through a series of underwater caves, many of which can be entered through cenotes in Mexico. I know, it's a lot to chew on. Sonar scans from a random boat 25 years ago hint at a civilization 45,000 years older than the pyramids. Why mainstream scientists aren't investigating it is beyond me. Maybe we should start a petition. What do you think? Or is that dumb? All around the world, caves reveal the secrets of people who no longer exist. Want to check out a few more? Over in Indonesia, archaeologists found a 45,500-year-old painting of a wild pig in a Sulawesi cave. And honestly, it is shockingly good for early cave art. Red ochre, proper proportions. This pig was posed. It's officially the oldest known animal painting in the whole world, proving that early humans were just as obsessed with bacon as we are. As for who drew the picture, that's a mystery that will surely never be solved. It was a prehistoric culture so old, nothing about them survives today, except for this painting of a juicy pig. Inside Israel's Qesem cave, archaeologists discovered prehistoric humans were controlling fire like they'd just unlocked the cheat code to civilization. They were adjusting temperatures, tweaking tool strength, and inventing the first R&D lab. Meanwhile, in China, there are the Mogao caves, aka the Caves of the Thousand Buddhas. Built starting in 366 AD, they hold more than 500 hand-carved temples, 2,000 statues, and art that has survived everything from war to biblical-level sandstorms. In 1900, a monk accidentally opened the library cave here, a sealed chamber that had been hiding 50,000 manuscripts in the dark for centuries. All that ancient wisdom left by ancient Chinese civilizations that just aren't around anymore. The library cave was like the Chinese equivalent of finding the Dead Sea Scrolls. From stone cities under the sea to ancient temples carved into desert cliffs, caves are where humanity hid its coolest stories. Some by accident, some on purpose, some that will never fully be understood. The real treasure isn't gold or bones, it's the questions we ask along the way. Who were they? What did they believe? What was life like living inside a cave before the wheel was invented? And now for a quick break because it's shout-out time! I wanted to give a big shout-out and thank you to Acid Glow and Atlantis Rising for supporting this channel. Thanks so much for watching and spending time with me today. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. The true face of an alien. What kind of head makes people think alien? I'll tell you. After decades of mystery, researchers have reconstructed the eerie, elongated skull of a woman buried in Dali, Switzerland in the 5th century AD. Her head is straight out of Area 51. It is so long and weirdly shaped that there has been speculation that this woman was no woman at all, but rather an alien. The skull was first dug up in the 1970s and has haunted historians and conspiracy theorists ever since. Was she a visitor from beyond? A time traveler? A Borg queen on vacation? Turns out she was a human woman in her 40s, shaped by a bizarre beauty trend called intentional cranial deformation. As a baby, her skull was carefully bound and shaped until it grew into a sleek, high-fashion oblong. It was ancient body mod meets the space alien glamour look. That might be a good theme for the next Met Gala. To find out more about this mysterious alien woman and her weird head, Cicero Moraes and his team digitally resurrected her face from the grave. They used scans and forensic wizardry to reveal what she looked like, bringing her back to life for the first time in 1,500 years. They began by creating a stark, bald grayscale version, classic horror movie reveal style. Then came the full version with skin tone, eyes, and digitally styled hair. The results are staggering. She had gentle features, a well-defined nose, and eyes that Moraes says project an intriguing presence. But what am I describing it for? Take a look for yourself. Now that's what I call a noggin. Just look at the shape of that skull. You can blame the Burgundians for the unusual look, since she was likely part of the Burgundian civilization. They were less of a kingdom and more of a mysterious European tribe influenced by Asian cultures like the Huns, who also practiced cranial deformation. The Burgundians may have adopted the practice of head shaping as a marker of status, religion, or aesthetics. No one's really sure of the motivation for the style. And while it may seem like the woman's brain was turned to mush by squishing her head like that, it was totally fine. Brain volume was good, and her health was as good as it could be for the Dark Ages. Now I have to make a bizarre connection. Just when you think it's over, another mystery surfaces. Far from Switzerland in the rough, hot, blazing sands of Kuwait, lizard-faced statues have been found with elongated skulls exactly like this woman's skull. Guess how old these statues are? I'll give you a clue. They are older than the Burgundians, the Huns, and even the Egyptians. The statues date back 7,000 years, crafted by the long-lost Ubaid civilization. The Ubaid were making figurines of reptilian humanoids with elongated skulls 5,500 years before our tribal woman was born. Where did the Ubaid get the inspiration to do this? I can't help but feel as if there's a much larger picture, one with a bunch of holes in it. Did the Ubaid meet real aliens with elongated skulls, kicking off a fashion trend that would last until modern times? Have people been modeling themselves after aliens and not even knowing it? Let me know what you think in the comments. The lost chariot warriors of the steppes. Imagine a lost civilization where every household smelled like a chemistry lab. The neighbors raced chariots for clout, and funeral planning involved horse sacrifices. Welcome to Sintashta, your new favorite Bronze Age disaster culture. These weren't your average fur-wearing, fire-starting steppeland nomads. The Sintashta, hailing from the southern Ural steppes around 2200 BC, were metalhead city builders, linguistic influencers, and possibly the original F1 racers. These people were hitting the track before there were tracks to hit. The Sintashta civilization is named after an archaeological site in Russia's Chelyabinsk Oblast, an ancient city in which every single house came with its own furnace and its own slag pile, like some kind of ancient Home Depot starter kit. Archaeologists think the Sintashta were cranking out metal at what you and I would call industrial scale. But why? Were they selling the metal to other cultures? Were they gearing up for war? To give you a better idea of their territory, check out this map by Joshua Jonathan. You can see the Sintashta moved way farther north than most European cultures. Okay, now ready for the mystery? Scientists suspect the Sintashta's obsession with metallurgy was their downfall. Ventilation wasn't really a Bronze Age priority, meaning all of those houses with makeshift forges in them weren't properly ventilated. Therefore, the Sintashta likely poisoned themselves slowly over generations by breathing in all the chemicals from their metalwork. Symptoms included nerve damage, weak limbs, and general confusion. It was just like how 20th century people inhaled lead for ages without realizing it was poisoning their very atoms. The Sintashta's other claim to fame is inventing chariots. It's thought they were the first to unleash wheeled carts on the open steppes. You know, the giant, uneven grasslands spread across Russia and Central Asia. They designed a one-person cart with fancy spoked wheels, and they didn't just use them for battle. They were buried with them, alongside their horses, weapons, and the occasional goat. For ritual reasons, or an afterlife road snack, no one knows. Historians are pretty overwhelmed by this news. They used to think chariots were born in Mesopotamia, where they became the war wagons of the Middle East. But it looks like the real pioneers of chariot racing were in Russia, drifting across the tundra like Bronze Age Fast and Furious characters. So if these people were so smart, what happened to them? Like a rock band that got too big for their hometown, the Sintashta expanded, traded, and exported everything from chariots to metal. They didn't collapse in the usual fiery doom way that cultures do. They merged into the historical blender of Mesopotamia and Iran, probably melting into some other culture. The Sintashta left behind just enough weirdness to keep archaeologists intrigued and to keep their name alive. It's wild that they've been gone for untold centuries, and here I am making them famous again on YouTube in 2025, 4,200 years after they emerged. A lost altar. This is the weirdest crossover episode in history. Archaeologists have just found proof that two of America's most important ancient civilizations were BFFs, sharing everything from altars to political coups and even a few bloody sacrifices. Archaeologists at Tikal, a once booming Maya city in modern-day Guatemala, were digging tunnels through what looked like a natural hill when they struck architectural pay dirt. They uncovered a 1,700-year-old altar so garishly painted and culturally out of place, it might as well have come with a Made in Teotihuacan sticker. Tikal is Mayan, but the altar found in its ruins is from Teotihuacan, outside Mexico City. They were two totally different societies. Decorated in bright red, black, and yellow, this altar features depictions of feathered figures and a storm god that looks suspiciously like artwork found at Teotihuacan. There isn't anything Maya about this altar, and to make things extra ghoulish, archaeologists found two skeletons underneath it. The skeletons were buried in very specific positions common 630 miles away in central Mexico. These were clearly Teotihuacan burials, not Mayan. The Maya could be brutal, but not as brutal as their neighbors in the north. 3 infants were found buried around the altar. They may have been sacrificial victims. It gives me the chills just to say it. Here's where things go full Game of Thrones. Experts believe Teotihuacan was in the process of pushing itself into Maya territory. This wasn't a gentle cultural exchange. It was the big bully of ancient Mexico trying to take control over the Maya Empire. Evidence shows that around 378 AD, envoys from Teotihuacan decapitated the local leader in Tikal and installed their own puppet ruler. The same thing that's been happening to nations today. Experts believe the altar they found was constructed at the time of the coup. The interlopers from Teotihuacan wanted their own traditional altar in the city. It was part of their larger plan to suffocate the Maya with their own cultural influences. It was sort of like what the Spanish would do with Christianity when they arrived in Mesoamerica. The Spanish snuffed out the ancient cultures of the Maya survivors, Zapotec, Aztec, etc., replacing their gods of blood and storms with Jesus Christ. But Teotihuacan's plans failed. The altar was discovered buried in such a way that excavators believed it was covered on purpose. The Maya appear to have destroyed the altar and buried it, like you might bury a cursed doll that's been haunting your house. Today, historians know a lot about the Maya, but the Teotihuacan civilization is a mystery, probably because they went the way of the dodo while the Maya persevered. Don't forget, the Maya are still alive and well in Mexico and Guatemala right now. They just aren't hanging out in temples and sacrificing their enemies anymore. We can all be thankful for that. Britain's secret connection. Long before Stonehenge's last block was placed, before Rome built a global empire, a little-known island in the Western Mediterranean was quietly turning itself into Bronze Age Europe's economic engine. That island was Sardinia. The civilization was the Nuragic. The Nuragic culture was a powerhouse of seafaring, architecture, trade, and surprisingly advanced cheese-making. Who doesn't love a good slice of cheese? The Nuragic people are so frequently overlooked in ancient history, but the truth is that they were at the center of a vast Bronze Age trading network, one that linked Britain and Scandinavia to places like Egypt, Turkey, and beyond. It all started 3,300 years ago when Sardinia became the Silicon Valley of the Bronze Age. The island was flush with copper, one of the 2 ingredients for bronze, the other being tin. Sardinia had the supply chain smarts to pair its resources with Cornish tin, shipping it across the known world to fuel a bronze boom. You had copper in Sardinia and tin in Britain. The tribal cultures of the British Isles teamed up with the mysterious Nuragic to start what may have been the world's first international trading conglomerate. Thanks to its central position in the Mediterranean, Sardinia evolved into a pan-European and Near Eastern trading hub. Goods flowed in and out. Tin from Cornwall, amber from Denmark, glass beads from the Levant, Cypriot copper, and exotic luxury items from every corner of the Mediterranean. This revelation is changing the way historians view the prehistoric British. The idea has always been that Britain was an isolated island before the Romans conquered it. But new excavations show that Cornish tin was sailing as far as Israel and Turkey, likely via Sardinian traders. A shipwreck off Devon even carried both Cornish tin and Mediterranean goods, hinting at global shipping lanes passing through the English Channel. Archaeologists recently uncovered a Bronze Age settlement near St. Michael's Mount. It was likely a port that plugged Britain directly into the Sardinian-centered network. And while it's not yet confirmed if Sardinian sailors ever docked in Britain themselves, there is a rock-cut tomb in Orkney, Scotland that mirrors rock tombs found in Sardinia. It really is a small world after all. These prehistoric cultures were far more interconnected than scientists had ever imagined. Wait a second, though. The Nuragic people weren't just traders and architects. Some historians believe they raided Egypt and parts of the Levant. One pharaoh was so impressed that records show he hired them as his personal guards. There is evidence that Nuragic explorers founded colonies in Israel, Crete, Sicily, and Cyprus. Nuragic tableware has shown up in digs across those islands. Their influence was wider than almost any other European group at the time. And then they disappeared into thin air, and to this day, scientists don't have a foggy clue what happened to them. Lost in the Sahara Desert. It's about to get hot. Beneath the burning skies and endless dunes of the Libyan Sahara, archaeologists have found something no one expected: a lost civilization hidden in plain sight. It is one that rewrites Africa's ancient past. Using high-resolution satellite imagery and ground surveys, a team from the University of Leicester uncovered more than 100 ancient settlements. That's a lot of settlements. They included fortified farms, towns, and villages, some with towering castle-like structures rising over 12 feet tall. These forgotten outposts were built by a civilization that nobody except people who read dictionaries for fun knows about. They are called the Garamantes, a Berber people once dismissed as desert raiders. Now they are being recognized as desert kings, engineers, and pioneers of trans-Saharan trade. My, how the tables turn, right? The Sahara is one of the harshest environments on the planet today. It receives zero rainfall, is scorching hot, and there is so much sand there is no way you're keeping it out of every nook and cranny. Despite all the sandy chafing and sunburns, the Garamantes built an entire urban network here between 1 and 500 AD. They developed mud brick citadels, advanced underground irrigation systems, massive fields and farm plots, and oasis towns buzzing with life and trade. For centuries, the Garamantes were painted as little more than troublemakers, nomadic thorns in Rome's side. But this discovery flips that narrative. As Professor David Mattingly put it, it's like someone coming to England and suddenly discovering all the medieval castles. That's how much stuff is hiding under the Sahara. Towns, castles, forts, so much stuff built by the Garamantes at a time when England didn't even have any castles. So how did this go unnoticed for so long? Under Libya's Gaddafi regime, archaeological research in the region was neglected. But with new tools like satellite scans and remote sensing, researchers were able to scan vast areas without physically going to the country. Dr. Martin Sterry, who led the image analysis, explained that the findings disprove an old and now outdated theory. Yes, the Sahara used to be green in the Stone Age, but it was already hot and sandy 3,000 years ago. This means the Garamantes didn't rely on some miraculous green phase to survive. They survived in the most hellish conditions imaginable. Could you hack it in the Libyan desert? Could you live under a sun so hot even a nap in the shade leaves you with heat stroke? Let me know in the comments, and be sure to subscribe while you're at it. A mysterious, unknown human species. Deep in the crusty crevices of South Africa, just a hop, skip, and a pothole-riddled drive northwest of Johannesburg, lies the cradle of humankind, the exact spot where evolution got weird with human beings. This place is so fossil-packed, it's like nature's version of a storage unit. Except instead of broken treadmills and boxes of holiday decorations, you've got ancient human remains embedded in limestone. In 2008, a kid named Matthew Berger was chasing his dog when he tripped over what he thought was a rock. Turns out, it was an Australopithecus sediba bone. Little 9-year-old Matthew stumbled upon a missing link in the human family tree. A whole extinct species. Way to go, Matthew! 5 years later, in 2013, cavers exploring the super spooky Rising Star cave system in South Africa discovered the bones of Homo naledi, yet another extinct human species and missing link on our family tree. Just how many of us were there? It's like everywhere you turn in South Africa, there is a human species that no one's ever heard of before. Homo naledi has proved to be infinitely interesting. At first, archaeologists assumed the bones belonged to a creature who lived in the cave. After all, Homo naledi was around 100,000 years ago, when caves were prime real estate. However, a new study has shown that naledi wasn't living in the cave where their bones were found. They were burying their dead in the cave like it was the world's first tomb. What makes this whole thing extra baffling is that our extinct friend H. naledi had a brain the size of a grapefruit. If you're not familiar with fruit-to-brain ratios, it's not a good comparison. Grapefruits are much smaller than the modern human brain, about 2/3 smaller. Even so, these primitive humans were able to act like introspective cave philosophers. They dug graves, probably held funerary ceremonies, and reserved the cave strictly for human burials. It's got scientists wondering if size is overrated. Brain size, of course. Paleo artist John Gersh even spent 700 hours reconstructing H. naledi's head to get a better idea of the creature's biology. Here, take a look for yourself at what our ancestors looked like. Cool, right? Huge head, flat nose, tiny brain. And still, it is the first time meaningful behavior has been identified in a non-human species. Technically, H. naledi is on our human tree, but it wasn't human. It was somewhere in between. But it buried its dead like it was part of a cult. Could there have been other, even more intelligent hominins in Earth's distant past? The timeless civilization of the West Coast. A lost civilization has been discovered right here in North America, and it is twice as old as the Egyptians. It even predates the legendary Clovis people, who were thought to be the first humans to settle on the continent. New archaeological discoveries are reshaping our understanding of the earliest human societies in North America. A team led by John Erlandson of the University of Oregon uncovered finely crafted, long-stemmed stone projectile points on California's northern Channel Islands. These tools, found with the remains of seals, birds, and fish, suggest a sea-based economy was thriving here. Now, are you ready to be shocked? Human remains on the nearby Santa Rosa Island date back at least 13,000 years. This is, at least for now, the oldest known human culture on the western side of the planet. Sort of earth-shattering, isn't it? Makes you feel like a tiny speck on the grand clock of life, huh? Erlandson believes these stone projectile points on the Channel Islands were designed for fishing and hunting in coastal environments. Similar but sturdier stemmed points have been found inland, such as in Oregon's Paisley Caves. Archaeologist Dennis Jenkins says whoever built these tools belonged to a distinct culture at least as old as Clovis. Though locals have been finding these tools on the Channel Islands for over a century, they weren't recognized as ancient until researchers began excavating them more recently. The broader picture suggests early humans followed the Pacific coast when they migrated to North America. The ancient shoreline is now underwater, submerged as ice sheets melted and sea levels rose. The original homes, settlements, fishing villages, all of it is currently underwater, which is exactly where researchers like Daryl Fedje and Heiner Josenhans have found signs of human activity, including barnacle-encrusted stone tools 150 feet below sea level off the coast of British Columbia. In simple terms, this mysterious civilization sunk. A few of their tools may be on the Channel Islands, but the bulk of their history remains underwater. They sank before Atlantis made it cool. Some archaeologists speculate that the coastal culture predates the Clovis and may have originated in Asia, traveling along a kelp highway rich in marine life. Erlandson noted that maritime humans reached the Kuril Islands of the Russian Far East 25,000 years ago. After that, crossing to the Americas by boat and then paddling down the Pacific coast would have been a natural next step. It was the canoe trip of the ages. A lost Greek city where? When you imagine a lost Greek city of marble pillars and giant statues of Zeus, what's the last place that comes to mind? Probably somewhere maybe like Afghanistan? But once upon a time in northern Afghanistan, there stood a city where people wore togas, debated philosophy, and yelled at each other in fluent Greek. This is the lost city of Ai-Khanoum, or as it's dramatically translated, Moon Princess. They sure don't name cities like they used to. Ai-Khanoum was established at the confluence of the Kokcha River and Amu Darya, where it was surrounded by farmland, cliffs, and walls thick enough to stop a very confused invading army. Discovered by accident in the 20th century thanks to a hunting trip gone academic, Ai-Khanoum turned out to be a time capsule of Greek life in Central Asia. The Greeks moved in around 300 BC and ran for the hills in 145 BC. They lasted a little more than 150 years, building palaces, mosaics, gymnasiums, and bathhouses. You could be an artist, pump iron, or debate ethics. Maybe even all three if you wanted to go for a Greek trifecta. The city even had a theater with seats for 6,000 people. That's Coachella for Plato fans. Then came the 1979 Soviet invasion. The site got looted, the crumbling columns were stolen or burned, and a cannon battery was plonked right on top of the Acropolis. Truly the worst guess in history. The city's origin has been traced back to Seleucus I Nicator, one of Alexander's top generals and founding CEO of the Seleucid Empire. When Alexander died in 323 BC, his generals were like maniacs on Black Friday trying to grab any piece of his empire that wasn't nailed down. Nicator took over part of Afghanistan, establishing what would become a very successful empire, and Moon Princess became a central hub for a whole host of different cultures: Persian, Greek, and even Hindu. Archaeologists found silver coins of Agathocles, a Greek king who ruled here, featuring none other than Hindu deities. This might be the only city in the world where Zeus and Vishnu are hanging out back-to-back on coins. Historian John Boardman believes Moon Princess helped Greek art sneak into ancient India, influencing everything from sculpture to temple design. Ai-Khanoum was the place where East and West shook hands, shared a glass of ouzo, and invented cross-cultural art. But it didn't last forever. In 145 BC, a group of nomads known as the Saka showed up from Eurasia and crashed the party. The city faded to dust, and the bones of its last residents are now scattered among the ruins.
Thanks for watching! Be sure to stay tuned for extra content you might have missed. The Assyrians. Situated on the outskirts of Mosul in present-day Iraq, the ancient Assyrian city of Nineveh was settled as early as 6000 BC during the late Neolithic period. By 3000 BC, it had become a major religious center dedicated to the Mesopotamian goddess Ishtar. Ishtar was the goddess of war and passion, as well as the goddess of rain and thunderstorms. Built along a fault line, Nineveh experienced numerous earthquakes, including one that destroyed the original temple of Ishtar. It became a great city and center of learning nonetheless, serving as the capital of the Assyrian Empire for much of its existence. Under King Sennacherib, Nineveh grew to include parks, aqueducts, canals, an 80-room palace, a wall surrounding the city, and a library containing around 30,000 clay tablets. Nineveh was continuously inhabited for thousands of years, and for roughly 50 years until 612 BC, it was the world's largest city. That year, a coalition of allied forces sacked and razed Nineveh, massacring many of its residents throughout the brutal attack and scaring others to the countryside. The city never recovered from the destruction, but was also never fully abandoned. In the following decades, Nineveh came under the rule of either the Medes or the Neo-Babylonian Empire, and was further conquered by numerous civilizations, including the Seleucid Empire, the Parthian Empire, the Sasanian Empire, and finally the Arabs. It was reduced mostly to ruins by the 13th century. The modern-day site consists of two large mounds and the remains of the city's massive stone and mud brick wall that was built around 700 BC. Sadly, what's left of Nineveh is losing its battle to the elements, looters, and the Islamic State, which threatened to destroy any remaining evidence of its long and rich history. Cahokia, what is today nothing but mounds of green grass near St. Louis, Missouri, was once the site of the largest ever pre-Columbian settlement anywhere north of the Mexican border. It was occupied from between 800 and 1400 AD, consisting of at least 120 mounds during its peak. At the time, it was one of the greatest cities in the world, even larger than London was in the year 1250. The culture occupied much of the Mississippi Valley, and each mound had its own purpose. For example, there were mounds used for public buildings and for burials. Archaeologists even discovered an astronomical observatory built of wooden posts that they dubbed Woodhenge. Yet despite so much archaeological evidence collected by the experts, we still don't really know a lot about the ancient Mississippian civilization or what happened to them. Like many of the other pre-urban societies of North America, they vanished between 1300 and 1400, leaving no evidence behind as to why they left or where they went. The world's first smiley face. The first smiley face in the entire world has just been put on exhibit in Turkey at the Gaziantep Archaeology Museum. The smiley face that we know and love actually goes back 3,700 years. You can think of it as the first emoji ever. The face was discovered inscribed on an ancient jug in the city of Carchemish. This old and forgotten city was the capital of the mysterious Hittite civilization. Apparently, they were making smiley faces before anyone else. The excavation team was led by Professor Niccolo Marchetti, who was in the city for 7 years searching for artifacts and trying to gain better insight into who the Hittites were. The archaeologists found plenty of interesting artifacts over the years, but the smiley face was by far the best. But why was the smiley face emoji inscribed on the side of an ancient jug in the first place? That remains a mystery that archaeologists will probably never solve. The jug was actually found in fragments and had to be pieced back together, and researchers were shocked when they saw the 2 dots and the semicircle making up the smiley face. It's the first one in human history, but nobody knows what could have motivated the artist. Perhaps someone just wanted to add some cheer to someone else's day by drawing them a smile. Great Zimbabwe. Built in the southeastern hills of modern-day Zimbabwe, the enormous walled city of Great Zimbabwe is one of ancient Africa's long-enduring mysteries. Researchers have established that Great Zimbabwe was rich, powerful, and technologically advanced, but the extent of its influence is unknown. People began living in Great Zimbabwe around 1100 AD, and it peaked between 1200 and 1450, during which time it housed as many as 30,000 residents. Wealth from distant lands flowed into the city, which was at the heart of an expansive and wealthy trade network that extended as far as China and India. The city was also rich with gold, thanks to its local mines and large cattle herds. Surrounded by walls measuring up to 66 feet high, the medieval city may have served as a royal palace for the Zimbabwean monarch. Even more mysteriously, the city suffered an unexplainable decline and was abandoned during the 15th century. Baffled scholars speculate that political instability, overpopulation, changes in trade routes, the exhaustion of gold mines, and/or famines caused by overgrazing may have contributed to Great Zimbabwe's downfall. Today, the UNESCO World Heritage Site is in ruins. Its most fascinating feature is the Great Enclosure. Dating back to the 14th century, the area is surrounded by a circular wall and additional inner walls, and it contains a tower. Its use is unknown, but researchers have suggested that it functioned as a royal palace or a grain storage facility. Sadly, only limited excavations have been carried out, and the site was significantly damaged during the 20th century by European looters. It's possible, or even likely, that Great Zimbabwe's secrets are contained within its unexplored ruins. The Kiladi Civilization. Archaeologists in southern India came upon a rusted old iron dagger that might not seem like much, but it might just provide clues about a lost civilization. Found near Tamil Nadu, the area was once home to the ancient Kiladi civilization. The dagger was found inside a burial urn right next to some very ancient skeletons. The dagger measures about 16 inches long, and even though it was broken in half, the wooden handle was still intact, which is almost even more important. Preserved wood can actually provide a lot of information. According to the Tamil Nadu Department of Archaeology, this type of dagger was used by warriors for about 600 years, between the 3rd century BC and the 3rd century AD. But this wasn't the only interesting thing found inside of a burial urn by the archaeologists. They discovered 25 other burial urns, some filled with weapons, some with random pieces of bone, and some with items long since decayed beyond recognition. Researchers believe the burial urns were left behind by the Kiladi and that they were part of a much larger cemetery. Some of the artifacts date back to about 580 BC, which fits in nicely with the time the civilization was active. Archaeologists currently know about 3 other sites linked to these mysterious people, where they left behind structures with clay floors, brick walls, board games, and a mysterious script. It's believed that these people descended from the Harappan civilization, and when it declined, some people may have moved south to start fresh. Not much is known about the Kiladi, but thanks to the wooden handle left behind by an ancient dagger, the dates are now much more clear. But what happened to these people that seemed to have it all together? They had a well-developed city for their time, agriculture, all kinds of industry, and a population who could read. Maybe it was some unknown disaster that forced them to leave. Iram of the Pillars. The Quran makes several mentions of an ancient city or a region called Iram of the Pillars. Roman and Nabatean traders reportedly recognized it for its vast wealth and its lofty buildings. Some believe that Iram was the home of a mighty tribe called the Ad. The Quran says they came right after the time of Noah and built monuments on elevated places. The city sometimes went by the name of Ubar and may have functioned as the capital of the kingdom of Ad. According to the Quran, a catastrophic wind blew through the region for 7 days straight and buried Iram in the sand, leaving no trace of it visible to the naked eye. What's left of it, if anything, is thought to be somewhere on the Arabian Peninsula. Nobody has ever found evidence of Iram being a real place, leading some experts to believe that Iram might have been a myth, a product of folklore that's been handed down through the generations. But even if this is the case, the stories may be rooted in a real place. Many people have searched for Iram, but it remains shrouded in mystery to this day. T. Lawrence, better known as Lawrence of Arabia, described the elusive ancient city as the Atlantis of the Sands. In other words, even if Iram actually existed, it continues to hide from everyone, but there are some desperately trying to find it. Etruria. Etruria was an ancient culture that emerged as early as 900 BC in what are now the Tuscany and Umbria regions of central Italy. Its inhabitants were the Etruscans, who shared a complex culture linked by a confederation of 12 city-states. By 650 BC, the civilization became a dominant culture, extending into both northern and southern Italy. The Etruscans also had far-reaching trade connections reaching as far as Egypt, with whom they both traded directly and through intermediaries, such as the Greeks and the Phoenicians. Etruria had a strong military tradition that generally benefited from warfare, embarking on raid campaigns of neighboring areas during the summer and acquiring territory and other valuable resources, including goods and slaves. The society valued monogamy and family life and gave women an unusual degree of freedom for the time, which perhaps contributed to the Roman and Greek views that Etruscan women were promiscuous. Etruscan culture strongly influenced Roman architecture, ritual practices, and other aspects of its culture. In fact, several Etruscan kings ruled in Rome until 509 BC, shortly before the Roman Republic was established. Etruria is also credited with bringing elements of Greek culture into the early Roman Republic, including the 12 Olympian gods, olive and grape farming, the Latin alphabet, and architectural features including the arch and sewer and drainage systems. Most mainstream scholars believe that when Rome absorbed Etruria cities during the 3rd century BC, the two cultures merged, but there are admittedly noticeable gaps in researchers' knowledge of the Etruscans, including their architecture, language, and literature. The Canaanites. The Canaanite civilization is mentioned multiple times in the Bible. It is one of the most mysterious ancient societies that we know almost nothing about. That is, until recently, when new archaeological evidence revealed that the ancient Canaanites may have crafted the earliest pieces of an alphabet that we still use today. Archaeologists investigating the old Canaanite settlement of Lachish discovered a pottery shard dating back 3,500 years. inscribed with what they say is the oldest text anywhere in Israel, written using an alphabetic script. Earlier texts have been found from the Canaanite civilization, but they were written using hieroglyphics or other outdated methods. What this discovery has done is fill a gap in the earliest history of the written word. From what scientists can understand, Canaanite migrants developed the alphabet in ancient Egypt. This is the very alphabet that would spread around the world and ultimately become what is used today in English, Spanish, French, and many other languages. The pottery fragment itself was probably imported from Cyprus and was written on with ink in the earliest Canaanite alphabet. Scientists have not been able to decipher the short text, nor have they been able to figure out how the Canaanites managed to go from hieroglyphics to an actual alphabet. The first fire. In one of the most shocking discoveries of our time, researchers believe they finally found the first fire. This has been a burning question for thousands of years, no pun intended. Anthropologists have debated when and where human beings figured out how to create fire whenever they wanted. This was the defining moment which separated our ancient ancestors from the kingdom of beasts. Because before fire, humans were basically just really hairy people hiding in the dark and being eaten by lions. To understand the development of fire, let's take a look at how fire is made. There are 3 ingredients: fuel, oxygen, and combustion. The biggest issue for ancient humans would have been combustion. The only way a fire would have started on Earth before us was lightning strikes and other weather phenomenon, or maybe lava from a volcano. So how did humans get the jump on it? The oldest fire that we know of created naturally was 420 million years ago, identified because of charcoal and rocks. But it wasn't until 345 million years ago, during the early Carboniferous period, that the first wildfire ravaged the world thanks to a high level of atmospheric oxygen. In Israel, inside the Kesem cave, archaeologists found the earliest evidence of humans making fire. This is the first place in the world where archaeologists have found evidence of a single hearth being repeatedly used. They found evidence that flint was used to start a fire in the same spot over and over, based on leftover scraps of stone and the charred ground dating back 400,000 years ago. However, it wouldn't be until 40,000 years ago that humans all over the world finally had a grip on the stuff. The Giraffe culture. During the 3rd millennium BC, in what is now Iran's Halil River Valley, an early Bronze Age civilization called the Giraffe culture emerged. The obscure culture's sprawling urban settlement was surrounded by rugged mountains on 3 sides and consisted of 2 large burial mounds, a fortified citadel, and numerous smaller buildings. The Giraffe people had a sophisticated lifestyle and a complex social hierarchy for their time. They practiced religion and crafted fine goods like vases and statues. After peaking sometime between 2500 and 2200 BC, the civilization abandoned its settlements for unknown reasons. Their deserted villages were buried and forgotten. The sites were rediscovered during the early 20th century. They were excavated several times, but also fell victim to looters, leaving few artifacts for experts to learn from. Consequently, modern scholars know very little about the Giraffe culture. It's clear that the people were a distinct group with their own architecture, language, beliefs, and a writing system that consisted of geometric figures. Some researchers believe that the society may very well be one of the cradles of civilization, one of the first places in the world where complex urban centers grew. It's even possible that the Giraffe culture was once as great as the Sumerians or ancient Mesopotamia. Unfortunately, most of what they left behind has been lost to history. Thanks for watching! Which ancient civilization is your favorite? Let me know in the comments below. And if you'd like to learn about more mysterious lost civilizations, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more. See you soon! Bye!